So welcome to a brand new year of this show. I hope you and your family had a great Christmas, and I wish you all the very best for the new year. And I'm hoping that throughout 2022, you'll watch GB News regularly, not least On the Money, every Monday to Friday at 1 p.m, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. Now, as we kick off this new year, it strikes me that Britain, both economically and politically, is at a turning point not dissimilar to when I was a kid back in the late 1970s. I have huge faith in the talent and grit of UK entrepreneurs and our workforce. But the British economy will recover from lockdown. On some estimates, given the extent to which the economy slumped during 2020, our GDP, that's the sum total of spending by firms, households and the government, grew pretty fast last year, 2021, and is set to outpace much of the rest of Europe this year, 2022. Yet there are still signs we're heading for a 1970s-style moment of economic and political reckoning. Over 40 years ago, newspaper headline writers wielded Shakespeare's great phrase, "Now is the winter of our discontent," to capture a sense of national dismay and outrage. Back then, inflation was soaring and government debt was spiralling upward. Shoppers and businesses faced regular shortages. Rubbish went uncollected in the streets. And as trade unions became increasingly stroppy, society became more fractious. I remember it well. Labour was then in power under sunny Jim Callaghan. And of course, we've been living through a once-in-a-century pandemic. But despite those differences, the emerging parallels between contemporary trends and those dysfunctional years of my early childhood are stark. Just as inflation upended the UK economy back then, price pressures are once again building. The Consumer Price Index in November was 5.1% higher than the same month in 2020, up from 3.1%, then 4.2% inflation during the previous 2 months. With inflation now at a 10-year high, and over 2.5 times the Bank of England's 2% target, official claims price pressures are transitory have finally been scrapped. So the UK now faces a major cost of living crisis, just as during the late 70s. The November inflation number was driven, after all, by record prices for necessities, fuel, utilities, clothes, food. That hit the poor hardest. The Bank of England's lately acknowledged CPI inflation could reach 6% by the spring, so real wages, that's after inflation, will keep falling during 2022. And just as that happens, the Tories will repeat Gordon Brown's old trick of raising national insurance contributions and freezing thresholds in the hope that nobody noticed taxes are actually going up. And just as those tax rises bite in April, they were announced by Rishi Sunak last year, utility bills are set to soar again. Already, heating and energy costs have risen sharply, driven by spiralling wholesale gas prices and the failure of many of the cheapest suppliers. While households have been partly shielded by the energy price cap, that cap shifted upward a few months ago and in April is set to rise once more. Now, back in the late 70s, trade unions were often militant and covered over half the workforce, compared to less than a quarter now. During lockdown, though, medical and teaching unions have become increasingly strident. Over the past year, millions of us have been denied in-person GP appointments, leaving countless life-threatening conditions undiagnosed. Some teaching unions, meanwhile, are now warning there could be serious disruptions to a third successive school year. If such trends persist, today's white-collar union militants could, in my view, cause just as much public outrage as their 1970s blue-collared counterparts. So the next couple of months could well bring an intensifying cost of living crisis combined with trade union intransigence. And that's our on-the-money question today. With a tough January and February looming large, does the UK face a winter of discontent?